For decades, the world of rock music has been shaped by legends, names that don't just echo through concert halls but leave a mark on the very soul of the genre. Two of those names, Jimmy Page and Ozzy Osbourne, have defined generations in completely different ways. Page, the mystical mastermind behind Led Zeppelin's thunderous riffs and timeless compositions. Ozzy, the madman from Birmingham who turned chaos into an art form as the frontman of Black Sabbath. Their paths have crisscrossed over the years, on stage, in studios, and through the tangled corridors of rock history. But one thing has remained constant: silence. Page has rarely, if ever, spoken publicly about Ozzy Osbourne. Until now. At 81 years old, Jimmy Page, long regarded as one of the most private figures in classic rock, has decided to speak. And what he has to say about Ozzy Osbourne has stunned fans and insiders alike. The moment came not in a bombastic press conference, nor in a headline-grabbing tweet, but during a quiet interview conducted in his London home. An interview initially meant to discuss his long-awaited autobiography. But when the subject of rock legends came up and Ozzy's name was mentioned, Page paused. And then, for the first time in decades, the floodgates opened. Page described Ozzy as a force of nature, not in the theatrical sense that many fans see on stage, but in the raw, unpredictable way that few people can truly understand unless they've worked in the same trenches. Ozzy always had this chaos surrounding him, Page said, but somehow that chaos was productive. It fueled him. You'd walk into a room with Ozzy, and you never knew if you'd walk out with a song, a headache, or a story you'd be telling for the rest of your life. Sometimes all three. It's easy to forget that while their musical styles were different, Led Zeppelin's mysticism and grandeur versus Black Sabbath's doomy heaviness, Page and Ozzy moved through the same circles, the same festivals, the same haunted clubs in London. They shared producers, engineers, and even fans who debated endlessly about who truly invented heavy metal. And yet, they rarely appeared together in public. Not out of rivalry, but out of something more complex: mutual reverence laced with distance. In the interview, Page recounted a memory that hadn't been told publicly before. It was 1974. Led Zeppelin was in the middle of recording sessions that would eventually lead to physical graffiti. Meanwhile, Ozzy was battling personal demons as Black Sabbath worked through internal tensions. One night, at a now-closed pub in Soho, Page ran into Ozzy. Not the on-stage Ozzy, the bat-biting madman, but a quieter, introspective Ozzy who had just come from a meeting with his band, visibly shaken. He sat down with me, Page recalled, and he started talking, not about music, but about fear. Fear of losing himself, of not being able to live up to the madness he'd created on stage. He said, "Jimmy, people think I'm a monster. What if I start believing it?" That moment stuck with me, because here was the Prince of Darkness, and all he really wanted was to not be alone in the dark. Page said that night changed the way he viewed Ozzy forever. No longer just the erratic showman, Ozzy became a symbol of what fame does to a person, how it elevates and isolates at the same time. It was a rare glimpse of vulnerability, and it stayed with Page through all the years of silence. But silence, as Page explained, wasn't about disdain or neglect, it was respect. Ozzy was telling his own story, in his own way. I never felt the need to jump in. But now, I think people should know that what he achieved was nothing short of a miracle. He wasn't supposed to survive the 70s, but he did. And not only did he survive, he evolved. That evolution is something Page admires deeply. He spoke candidly about watching Ozzy's resurgence in the early 2000s, particularly with The Osbournes, the reality TV show that introduced a new generation to the rock icon. Page admitted he initially cringed at the idea. "When I first heard about it, I thought, this will destroy the mystique. But then I watched it and I realized Ozzy never cared about mystique. He cared about truth, and the truth was messy, funny, loud, and deeply human. Page reflected on the irony that while Led Zeppelin protected their image like a sacred artifact, rare interviews, no reunions, no camera crews following them home, Ozzy shattered that mold entirely. And yet, both approaches worked. It goes to show, Page said, that there's no right way to be a rock god. There's only your way. Perhaps the most surprising revelation came when Page admitted he had been quietly rooting for Ozzy during the singer's recent health battles. Ozzy, now in his mid-70s, has dealt with a host of issues, from a near-fatal staph infection to Parkinson's disease. While fans around the world sent messages of support, Jimmy Page did something different. He picked up the phone. "I called him," Page said, "and I didn't know what to say. What do you say to someone who spent their life defying death? I just told him I was thinking of him." He laughed. That laugh, it hadn't changed. Still that cheeky, defiant sound that says, "I'm not done yet." That call marked their first real conversation in over a decade. Page confessed that it made him wish they had talked more over the years, collaborated more, or simply shared more moments together offstage. "Time has a funny way of slipping past when you're busy making legends," he said. And then, one day, you look around and realize the real stories were never in the albums or the shows. They were in the quiet moments, the ones you didn't write down. He also revealed that one of his regrets was not performing live with Ozzy. While there were rumors over the years, particularly during the late 80s when Ozzy was experimenting with different guitarists, nothing materialized. Page hinted that there were discussions, brief and informal, about a one-off jam or festival appearance, but logistics, egos, and timing always got in the way. "But I'd be lying if I said I never imagined it," Page smiled. "Ozzy on vocals, me on guitar, maybe a Sabbath song, maybe a Zeppelin tune twisted into something heavier. We would have blown the roof off the universe." As the interview drew to a close, Jimmy Page made one final, powerful statement. Ozzy is a survivor, a pioneer, a lunatic, and a poet. And after everything, after the tours, the scandals, the addictions, he's still here, still fighting, still making music. That deserves more than applause. That deserves reverence. In an era where rock legends are fading away with every passing year, Page's words strike a deep chord. These aren't just tales from the past. They're living testaments to the resilience of the human spirit, told by those who didn't just watch history, they were history. Jimmy Page breaking his silence on Ozzy Osbourne wasn't about setting the record straight or stirring up the past. It was about legacy, about paying tribute to a fellow warrior in the eternal battle of art versus oblivion. And maybe, just maybe, about reminding the world that behind every myth is a man, flawed, fragile, and unforgettable. Because in the end, that's what rock and roll was always about. Not perfection, not polish, but passion, chaos, truth. And as long as people like Jimmy Page and Ozzy Osbourne are still around to tell their stories, that truth will never fade.